If one was suspected of sabbatical year violations, one may not purchase from him flax, even comb, but we may purchase from him thread or braided ropes. If one is suspected of selling truma as ordinary produce, we may not purchase from him even water or salt. And these are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Shimon says, whatever has a connection to truma and maisa, we may not purchase from him. One who is suspected of sabbatical year violations is not suspected of transgressing the laws of maisa. One who is suspected of maisa violations is not suspected of sabbatical year violations. One who is suspected of both these violations is suspected of transgressing the laws of ta'ara. But in some cases, one who is suspected of Torah violations is not suspected of violating this one or that one. This is the rule. Whoever is suspected of something may neither judge nor testify concerning it.
Okay. All right. Perik Hey. So when you have something that was mukdash, right? And then it came a mum. A permanent mum, and they've now been redeemed. Okay, so right they now, since they are being redeemed, they may be sold in the marketplace. Okay, and there are no restrictions on how they can be sold. They can be sold as normal chulin meat, v'nishchatin be'itlis. They can be shechted in the regular abattoir, v'nishkalin be'litra, and they can be weighed on the regular scale. No problem. Why would you think there's a problem? Because we got two specific cases. Chutz min ha-bechor u'min ha-maser. When you've got a bechor animal that gets a mum, and let's say the Kohen wants to sell it now, or maser, they're talking about maser behema.
Right.
Okay. So both of these are mukdash, and they're supposed to be brought in Yerushalayim. So the difference between bechor is that bechor has to be given to the Kohen, and he has to eat it in Yerushalayim, and maser behema, the owner brings, and he's supposed to eat it in Yerushalayim, like Shlamim. Okay, because the benefit of the bechor and of the maser, it goes to the owner, as opposed to psulah mikdashin hanayasan lehekdesh. With the other things, the money goes to the mikdash. So therefore, what do you have when it comes to restricting the amount of money that comes in for selling this animal that was pasul for the mikdash? The benefit is going to go to the mikdash, so we don't put any restrictions on it. When it comes to a person, we put a restriction on the person that he shouldn't make money off the fact that his mukdashim became pasul, and he shouldn't treat it irreverently. So shoktin manik neged manik bechor. So how does he do it? He has to sell it privately, or he has to sell it, with a big shinoi that if he wants to shows his potential buyer how much it's worth, he can say, look, we weighed this piece of chulin, we know it weighs 5 kilograms. So here, take this piece against it, and you weigh against it, and you see, okay, so this is about the same. So we have these restrictions on selling bechor and maser. It shouldn't be done in the marketplace. He can do it privately from his home, and it shouldn't be done on this sort of on a scale that people use for commercial sales. Okay, just so people shouldn't be mazalzel in the kedusha. Okay. Beis Shammai omrim lo yimane Yisrael lima kohen ala bechor. So now there's a dispute between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai about the meat of the bechor. Now we know that the bechor itself has to be given to the kohen, but once the kohen has it, is it only a kohen who's allowed to eat it, or can he just share the meal with anyone else? And Beis Shammai is of the opinion that the bechor meat is only for kohanim to eat, them and their households. Beis Hillel matirin va'afilu nochri. They say all it is his possession. It's a monetary value. It's just a monetary thing that the Israel has to give the bechor to the kohen. But if the kohen subsequently wants to gift it back to a Israel, or he wants to just have a suda and invite his friends, the Israelim and the Nochrim and whoever else wants to come and eat with him, not a problem. There's no kedusha, no intrinsic kedusha to the meat that only a kohen can eat it. Bechor she'achaz dam.
Is it halakha Beis Hillel?
Yes. Invariably, there are very few places where the halakha follows Beis Shammai.
Right.
Yeah. Bechor she'achazot dam. So you have a bechor that is suffering from a disease, a veterinary disease that requires bloodletting. Okay, if it's whatever our medical knowledge is, that was their medical knowledge was that there was such a thing where in order to save this animal, you have to injure it and you have to make a hole in it and let some blood out. Okay. Now the problem with this bechor is that by making a puncture in one of its blood vessels, it's possible that you're going to cause a mum, a deliberately caused mum, because you're trying to get into the blood. Okay. So says Rabbi Yehuda, afilu hu meis ein makizin lo dam, divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Now this is an amazing thing, because you'll see the same argument in parallel for Shabbos. We'll see in a minute. Rabbi Yehuda I'm going to remind you of this now. Actually, Rabbi Yehuda is the guy who goes after Maaseh, about what actually happens. So he says when there's a davar she'eino miskaven, if a person is walking, pushing a pram through a field of grass, and he sees that the grass is being uprooted, Rabbi Yehuda is going to say, Asur, you're not allowed to go any further. Because he says, but he say, I don't care about the grass. I'm not. He says, but no, it's you are potentially uprooting the grass, and therefore Lamase, you're uprooting grass, which is Asur Minatar. Okay, so Rabbi Yehuda says Asur. Rabbi Shimon says if it's davar she'eino miskaven, if he goes after kavana. Says if you're not intending to uproot the grass and it's not a psik ratio, that's important. It's not a psik ratio. It's not inevitable. You could, carefully push the thing so that it doesn't uproot the grass. But if you're pushing it and it uproots the grass, I don't care. It's not your intention to uproot the grass, and it's not inevitable. Therefore, it's mutar. Okay. Also, we'll see. We'll come into the other case later. But you see that this works in parallel over here. Rabbi Yehuda looks again at the maaseh. The maaseh, you're inflicting a wound, and therefore you're not allowed to do it, says Rabbi Yehuda. So let him do the bloodletting, but be careful not to make a mum. And if he actually did make a mum, then that mum is inadmissible as a heter to shech the animal. Okay, so try not to make the mum. If you do make a mum, no, you're not allowed to, but you're not allowed to shecht on it. Rabbi Shimon comes into the picture and says, Yakiz, do it. Says, and if it turns out that you made a mum, then it was a davar she'eino miskaven, and you didn't intend to. It was an unintentional mum, and therefore it's mutar to shecht the animal. So he goes even further than the Chachamim. The Chachamim said it's mutar to do the bloodletting, but you can't. But if a mum comes out, you can't rely on it. Rabbi Shimon says, I don't care. If the mum comes out and you didn't intend it, then you can still shecht on it. And actually, the halacha here is like Rabbi Shimon, says Rambam. So even though it says Chachamim in here, we also follow Rabbi Shimon when it comes to Shabbos. Where's the other case where this happens with Rabbi Shimon? Is in the famous story of the Romans, where Rabbi Yehuda was going and praising the Romans, saying what a wonderful cultured nation this is, how they've built marketplaces and they've built bridges and aqueducts and whatever, all these wonderful things that we're having the benefit from. And Rabbi Shimon comes and says, what are you talking about? They built the marketplaces to put prostitutes in. They built the bridges to put tolls on. It's all. And what's going on over here? Rabbi Yehuda is saying, L'maaseh comes out good for us. Rabbi Shimon says the kavanah is bad. And again, you have that consistent thing of the shitot is that Rabbi Yehuda goes after maaseh and Rabbi Shimon goes after kavanah. Okay. So that was just a very interesting thing that you learn just consistently through the different Tanaim. Okay. Mishna Gimel, Hatzorim be'ozen habachor. Now, what happens if somebody makes deliberately inflicts a wound on the ear of a bechor? Okay. Hare ze lo yishchat olamis, divrei Rabbi Eliezer. So Rabbi Eliezer says there's a penalty now. Once a person has inflicted a wound deliberately on his own bechor, now he may never shech this bechor. He is and he's bound for life to look after this Bechor until he or it dies. And
What
there
happened, what happened to the Mishnah before, where we said if you have to make a mum,
that was an unintentional one. Here the case is talking about where a guy was trying to be sneaky. He wanted to shech. He was sick of dealing with his Bechor, and he said, "Let me just see if I can make a quick mum in this thing." And he got caught.
Okay.
So he got caught, and now his penalty is that he has to look after the Bechor until either he or it dies. Okay. Now Chachamim omrim, no, we're not going to be quite as harsh as Rabbi Eliezer. Let him keep it, but if it develops a different mum, then he can shecht on that. Okay, and in both cases, if he dies first, and then his Yorshim have received a Bechor that has a mum through no fault of their own, and therefore they would be allowed to shecht immediately. So it's only a knas on the person who did it. Now there was an interesting story that happened with a Zachar Shel Rechelim. So there was an old ram. Usara meduldal, and its wool was all shaggy, and kastor echad. So the Roman quaestor saw this ram. Amar, what's the problem with this sheep? Why don't you look after your sheep? Like, oh, what's the issue? And like, it must have looked like really weird to him that there's this sheep that's being totally unattended, hasn't ever been sheared, and Amrulo bechorhu be'eno nishchat ela im ken haya bo mum. Says, look, it's a bechor, and our halacha is that we're not allowed to shecht it until it develops a blemish. So he thought this is the most ridiculous thing, and he wanted to be mezalzal. He wanted to show them what idiots these Jews are. And that's how pigyon v'tarim bo'ozno. So he took a dagger and put a mum inside in its ear. Okay. So they took this animal with a shaila to the chachamim. Okay, so the Roman came and deliberately put a mum in it. And they said, okay, that's good. He wasn't trying to help us. He was trying to mock us, if anything. So great. We now have an animal that's got a mum, and they shechted it. Wonderful. News gets back to the quaestor. Ra'ash hitiru. V'halach v'tzaram b'choras acherim. So he said, okay, well, maybe I can score some points with the Jews over here. If I go around looking for all these Bechoros that have got shaggy wool and whatever, and I put a mum in all of them, they'll be happy with me. But Asaru and the Chacham said, now it's being done specifically for the Jews. We're not going to make this admissible as a mum. Similar case. Pam achas hayu tinokos masachakin basadeh. So there were some kids playing out in the field, and they got up to mischief, and v'kashu zanus telaim zelazeh, and they took the lambs and they tied their tails together just because they were being kids. Okay. And one of them actually had its tail detached. And this happened to be a Bechor. And they said, okay, this Bechor has got a mum, you can shecht it. The kids said, okay, our parents will be happy with us if we do this with all the other Bechoros. And once again, Basar and the Chachamim said, no more. You can do that once. So this is now your general rule. Kol shehu l'dato asur, v'shelo l'dato mutar. If it's being done intentionally, it is asur. But if it's being done unintentionally, and the mum comes about like that, then we can shech the animal for it. Okay. Aleph Zayin.
If he does not wish to redeem it, he must decapitate it with his large knife from behind and bury it. The precept of redemption takes precedence over the precept of decapitation, as it states, and you shall not redeem it, you shall decapitate it. The precept of Yud takes precedence over the precept of redemption, as it states, who did not designate her, he shall cause her to be redeemed. The precept of Yibum takes precedence over the precept of Chalitza. In the early days, when they would intend to perform Yibum for the sake of fulfilling the precept, but now they do not intend to perform Yibum for the sake of fulfilling the precept, and they said the precept of Chalitza takes precedence over the precept of Yibum. The precept of redemption is on the owner, He takes precedence over any other person, as it is said, and if it is not redeemed, it shall be sold for its evaluation. Excuse me 1 second. Someone's ringing my doorbell. I'm sorry. Okay, sure. Okay, the precept of redemption is on the owner.
We've done that. We've done that. We've gone to Perek base now.
I'm sorry. Let's flip back. Base Aleph. No. Base Aleph, right?
Base Aleph.
One who buys a fetus of a cow belonging to a non-Jew or sells one to him, even though it is not permissible, or enters into a partnership with him, or receives a cow from him to hold, and gives one to him to hold, is exempt from Bechoros laws, as it is stated in Israel, but not in others. Kohanim and Levites are liable, and they were not exempted from the Bechoros law of kosher animals. They were exempted only from the redemption of the son and from the law of the firstborn donkey. All consecrated animals whose permanent blemish preceded their consecration and which were redeemed are subject to the laws of Bechor and the gifts due to the Kohen, and then revert to mundane status even to the extent that they may be shorn and put to work. Their offspring and their milk are permitted after the redemption. One who slaughters them outside the temple courtyard is not liable. They do not affect Tumor, and if they die prior to the redemption, they may be redeemed except for the Bechor and the Misa offerings. Okay. One more? No, I think that's it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay. Menachos Yud Gimel base.
If I said, I take upon myself to bring a mincha offering or a kind of mincha offering, he brings one. If he said mincha offerings or a kind of mincha offerings, he brings two. If he said, I specify, but I do not know what I specified, he must bring all five of them. If he said, I specified a mincha offering of Isserons, but I do not know what I specified, he must bring a mincha offering of 60 Isseron. Rebbe says he must bring all the mincha offerings from 1 to 60 Isseron. If he said, I take upon myself to bring pieces of wood, he may not bring less than 2 logs. Frankincense, he may not bring less than 2 comments. There are 5 chemetzim. If he said, I take upon myself to bring frankincense, he may not bring less than 1. If one who donates a mincha offering must bring with her comments of frankincense, and one who offers her comments outside the temple courtyard is liable, and the 2 spoonfuls require 2 chemetzim. If one said, I take upon myself to bring gold, he may not bring less than a dinner of gold. Silver, he may not bring less than a dinner of silver, and copper, he may not bring less than its equivalent of a mana of silver. I specify, but I do not know what I specify. He must bring until he can say, I did not intend this.
Okay. That's it.
Okay.
Okay. Avos.
Avos, Gimel Tet. Rabbi Kanina Mendoza says, anyone whose fear of sin precedes his wisdom, his wisdom will endure. And anyone whose wisdom precedes his fear of sin, his wisdom will not endure. He used to say, anyone whose actions exceed his wisdom will endure. And anyone whose wisdom extends his actions, his wisdom will not endure. He used to say, anyone with whom the spirit of his fellows is pleased, the spirit of the omnipresent is pleased with him. And anyone whose wisdom the spirit of the fellows is not pleased, the spirit of the omnipresent is not pleased with him. When Dosa ben Harkin, it says, morning sleep, midday wine, children's chatter, and sitting of gatherings of the ignorant remove a person from this world. But Elazar ben Moabite says, one who desecrates consecrated objects, one even though I skipped a part, didn't I?
Yeah.
I skipped a part. One who desecrates consecrated object, one who disgraces the festivals, one who shames his friend in public, and one who nullifies the covenant of the forefather Abraham, peace be upon him, when one who reveals explanation of the Torah contrary to halakha, even though he may possess Torah and good deeds, he has no share in the world to come.
Okay.
That's it.
That.
Okay, we are on Gittin. Base Hay. All are qualified to write a get, even a deaf, mute, a mentally deranged person, and a minor. A woman may write down her own get, and a man may write his own receipt, for the validity of the document is dependent upon those who signed it. All are qualified to bring a get except a deaf, mute, mentally deranged person, a minor, and a blind person, and a Gentile. If a minor received it and then became of age, or a deaf mute and then became able to hear, or a blind person and became able to see, a mentally deranged person and became sane, or a Gentile and then he became a proselyte, he is not valid. He is not valid. However, if it was a hearing person who received it and then he became a deaf mute, and then he regained his hearing, or a seeing person, and then he became blind and then regained his seeing, the sight, and the same person and then became mentally deranged and then regained his sanity, he is valid. And the general rule, anyone who is mentally competent at the beginning or at the end and at the end is valid. Even those women who are not trusted to say her husband died are trusted to bring a get. Her mother-in-law, her mother-in-law's daughter, her co-wife, her husband's brother's wife, and her husband's daughter. What is the difference between a get and a testimony of death? That the written document is evidence, and the woman herself may bring her own get. Only she must say that it was written in my presence and signed in my presence.
Okay. Shabbos.
Okay. Head base. From where do we learn that a ship is not susceptible to tuna contamination? For it was stated the way of a ship in the midst of the sea. From where do we learn that a garden bed that is 6 by 6 handbreadths may be sowed with 5 types of seeds, 4 on the 4 sides of the garden bed and 1 in the center? For it is stated, for like the earth it will give forth its plant, and like a garden it will cause its seeds to grow. The seed is not stated, but its seeds. Labrut.
Okay.
From where do we learn that a woman who emits semen on the 3rd day is tummy? For it is stated, be prepared for 3 days. From where do we learn that we may bathe a circumcised infant on the 3rd day, even if it falls on Shabbos? For it is stated, and it came to pass on the 3rd day when they were in pain. From where do we learn that a strip of red wool is tied on the head of the goat that is sent out? For it is stated, if your sins be like crimson, they will become white as snow. Okay.
And one more, yeah.
And
One more in Shabbos, yeah.
Right, from one.
Mishna Daled as well.
So where do we learn that anointing is tantamount to drinking on Yom Kippur? Although there is no proof for that matter, there is an imitation of the matter, for it is said, and he came like water into the Indians and like oil into his bones.
Okay. And
it's Tahara.
Bechoros.
Someone who eats a shani food should not work in the oil press. And coolant foods that were made to be standard of sacrificial foods, these were like coolant. The Eliezer Bar Sadik says they are like truma, to convey truma to 2 and disqualify 1. Gravy, bean stew, and milk, when they are liquid enough to moisten their beginning level of tuma. If they are congealed, they are shanis. If they dissolved again, their size is exactly an eggs volume, and they are tahor. And if they consist of more than an eggs volume, they are tameh for as soon as the first drop emerges, it is rendered tameh by an eggs volume of food. Rameir says oil is always beginning level of tuma, and the sages say even honey. But Shimon Seori says even wine. Regarding a mass of olives, which fell into an oven, and then the oven was kindled, and the mass consists of exactly an egg volume of olives, the oven is tahor. If the mass consists of more than an egg volume of olives, the oven is tameh. For as soon as the first drop of oil emerges, it's reduced tameh. It's rendered tameh by an egg volume of food, and if the olives are separate, even if they consist of a saw, the oven is tahor.
Okay, that's us.
That's it.
Okay, and I'm going to run along. Have a wonderful day.
See you tomorrow, the same thing. I'll let you know. Thanks, Sam.
Chodesh Tov.